Hello, good day everyone. So this is a recording for the week 5 material, elasticity and its applications. And of course, this will be tested for your midterm. So here we go. We're going to learn about what the elasticity is, what the price elasticity of demand for a start. Remember the word price elasticity of demand. Right? Now, price elasticity of demand is when the price goes up, what happened to the quantity demanded. That's the idea. And that's where we start here as the law of demand, right? So basically all of you know that when the price goes up the quantity will come down, but we want to measure how much it is, right? Or what is the rate, if you say, in other words. um, Now for some goods like petrol and stuff like that, the price goes up, you still want to buy the petrol, right? Because you want to get from A to B. But on the other hand, if it was something like let's say coffee, if one particular area has coffee very expensive, then what we'll do is that you would go and buy from somewhere else. So their response of decrease in quantity demanded is much higher, right? Now how do we measure that? We measure this in terms of the percentages. Okay, that's what the idea of percentage here is a percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. So have a look here. If you have percentage change in quantity demanded, I showed you in the class how do you do. Let me just show you here. Let me just do a paint here and then we'll go from there. Okay, have a look here. Okay, so let me just bring this. Yep, you can see that. Okay, so what's going to happen here? Percentage change, right? So it's a percentage change in, so see percentage sign, in quantity divided by the percentage change in price, right? Now how do you work out? So let's say I give you figures, right? I give you price used to be, let's say 40, and price changed to, let's say 60. It's increased, so the quantity will also respond. So quantity 1 would have been, let's say 10, and now when the price changed it becomes 5. This. Okay, so I take this one first. This is I want you to exam. You take this first, right? And you try to solve this. So it is, the formula is Q2 minus Q1 divided by Q1. Okay, and which is equal to 5 minus 10 divided by 10, and you get a negative value, right? Similarly for this one here, you work out P2 minus P1 divided by P1, which is equal to 60 minus 40, right? 40 divided by 40. Understand? So you get a value here, you get a value, you just substitute in here, you get elasticity. Now this is when I ask you, just say price elasticity of demand. Now there will be something what we call is midpoint method. Okay, this is just when I say price elasticity of demand. Okay, this is the formula applied. Now there is something else what we call midpoint method. Now the exactly same thing, midpoint method. Okay, now midpoint method slightly works a bit differently. It's also does the price elasticity of demand. Okay, so price elasticity of demand, this is how you write elasticity of demand. Okay, so same thing. So you have your percentage change in quantity divided by the percentage change in price, right? But the idea here is percentage change in quantity. We used to do Q2 minus Q1 divided by Q1. Now this is where the change comes. You change this. You don't use Q1 now. Instead you take an average. Q1 plus Q2 divided by 2. Okay, and you get a value, you get a number, and you substitute a number here. Do not put Q1. Similarly, for price, P2 minus P1 divided by the average. Okay, it's not P2. So that is P2 plus P1 divided by 2. Okay, and you get the value, you put that in here, and that's what we call average. So it's average of P. And this one here, average of Q. So that's basically what this midpoint method is. So I have actually explained this to you much in advance now. In the other slide, we'll have a look here. Okay, so price elasticity of demand is a measure of how much the quantity demanded of a good responds to the change in the price of that good. Everything else is held constant. Okay, so we went in there. Now how do we classify? Now once you work out the elasticity, if the elasticity is greater than 1, now it's absolute value. Okay, so you always go to the negative value, but if the absolute value is greater than 1, you get elastic. If the absolute value is less than 1, it's inelastic. Absolute means you simply ignore the negative, right? And then if it's exactly equal to 1, if you ignore, once you ignore the minus sign, you get unit elastic. Okay, now have a look here. So this is a kind of a steep line, right? A steep means it's very sloppy, right? I mean, you mean it's a slope, right? Now what I want you to sort of understand here is right. So have a look here. It's pretty steep line, right? You have a steep line here, or you have a flat line like this, right? So look at the steep line here. So price is increasing by 20%, but the quantity is decreasing only by 11% here, see? So that means if that's the case, the quantity is not very quick to respond, isn't it? 22, only 11. So, well, people are not that sensitive. So what we call is inelastic. Now here is a perfectly elastic. That's a very extreme case. That means when the price changes, no matter what it changes, the demand does not change at all. On the other hand, here you got 4 to 5 is 22%, 100 to 80 is 22% as well. So exactly same, what we call unit elastic. On the other hand, this is much flatter. A 22% increase in price leads to 67% decrease in the quantity demanded. So think about that. So that basically is a flatter. That means it's elastic, right? And this is perfectly elastic, means, you know, if the price changes anything, there is no demand, so that becomes zero. So there is no, you know, it's very elastic, perfectly elastic. Now this was a question I mentioned in the class. So the price goes on from P1 to P2, Q1 to Q2, right? And you do this and you get minus 0.66. And same question, I'm reversing it from 6 to 4, 80 to 10. And now have a look. It get a different line. One is giving you inelastic, other is giving you elastic. So that's sorry. So that's the big trouble. Well, why is that? 4 to 6, 120 to 80, 6 to 4, and 80 to 120 should actually give me the right same answer, because I'm just moving across the same point, you know. But no, this is a problem with our formula. So that's why we bring the midpoint. See this midpoint, I talked about it. That means, see, this is P2 minus P1. We haven't put P1 here. We put 6 plus 4 divided by 2, which is 5. So you put the average. Similarly, 80 plus 120 is 200. Divided by 2 gives you 100. So 4 minus 4, you get minus 1. And if you skip the number around, you get the same answer. So that means you put 4 first. 4 minus 6 divided by 5. 120 minus 8 divided by 100. You will get the same answer. So that's the benefit of that is. So this is a midpoint method example, and you'll get, so absolute value is greater, value is 2, which is greater than 1, therefore it's elastic. Does that make sense? Right? So just go through those questions there and see how you get on, okay? So let's continue. So, okay, one other thing I want to think about is what happens in the total revenue. When it's elastic, right, that means consumers are very, very sensitive. Then you, if you increase the price, then obviously a lot of them are going to not go buy on your products. So that means your revenue is actually decreasing. On the other hand, if you decrease the price, oh, a little bit decrease, customers are very sensitive. That means they will buy a lot more of the percentage reduction. You're going to get a high total revenue. Okay. And if it's inelastic, obviously price increase, but customers are not going to be sensitive. Like medicines, increase the price, your revenue is going to, because people got no choice, right? On the, if you decrease, you get less total revenue. Unit elastic is when price increase or decrease have no impact on total revenue, right? Doesn't matter really. The flatter the curve, the bigger the elasticity, the steeper the curve, the smaller the elasticity. Perfectly inelastic demand. And then inelastic demand, you already mentioned about that. Inelastic demand, elastic demand, right? Perfectly elastic demand. And few elasticities around the world. You've had eggs, healthcare, rice. You notice that these things are inelastic, right? Because they don't really have much substitute. Eggs doesn't have substitute. Healthcare, you can't, if you get need medicine, you need medicine. Rice, perhaps not. But on the other hand, Pepsi, restaurant meals, you got a lot more options, so they're more elastic, more sensitive. Customers are more sensitive. Total expenditure and the price and elasticity. Now, this is sort of an example. Expenditure means how much you spend will increase or not. So the idea is, if it's very elastic, then obviously you won't spend that much because you won't buy that product. But if something like medicine price goes up, you're still going to buy, so your expenditure will increase. That's what basically this idea here is. So read through that. Don't need to worry about these ones here, okay? But you just need to understand the revenue and the relationship. You don't need to understand the graph, but you clearly need to understand this particular thing here. Let me just show you. Yeah, this one here, elastic and impact on revenue. You need to know that, okay? So basically everything else here, we come into cross price elasticity. Now cross price elasticity is what? Now remember we talked about, or before that, sorry. Before that, I just need to take you through this elasticity of linear demand. Now, remember this line is a straight line, right? So the slope is the same. That basically means when you move from here to here, if you work around, how much quantity and how much price, you'll know it's the same slope. It doesn't change. Something that not non-linear means his slope will be something like this, right? Line will be something like this. So what are we talking about here? So in this case here, we are saying elasticity is different. It's easy to think that because the slope is same, elasticity will be same. No, it's different. On the top of here, you see, is 5, or it's technically should give you negative, but just to make it easier, it's elastic greater than 1. And then in the middle, you notice it's exactly 1, so that's unit elastic. Then after that, it is inelastic. Does that make sense? So higher the price is, people are like, now that makes sense. If the price of something is very high and they increase it further, then people are going to lose. So they're very elastic, very sensitive around this area here. But on the other hand, on the extreme here, well, prices are low, you charge a bit more extra, doesn't really care, I still got lots of money. So that's inelastic. People are not that sensitive here, okay? And on the other hand, in the middle, it's just 1. That's not really that interesting. Now, then we have cross price elasticity of demand. What is cross price elasticity of demand? Now, we measure the response of demand for one good to the changes in the price of another good. So remember, you have the price and quantity of one good. Here it will be 2 good. So it's just, I will clearly give you the quantity of the good one and the price of good 2. You just need to sort of substitute the value. So idea is, if you put the value in there, let's say beef and chicken. If the price of beef goes up, you put the change in price in the beef here, and the quantity of chicken is going to increase, right? Because beef and chicken are substitute. So in that case, your cross price elasticity is going to be what? It's going to be positive. Increase in price of beef leads to an increase in quantity for chicken. Positive, positive. So it's greater than positive. You can say they are substitute. You understand what I'm trying to say? So I'll give you a question. Suppose the cross price elasticity between 2 goods are positive. Tell me whether they are substitute or complement. So in this case, it will be substitute. On the other hand, complements will be, let's say you got bread and jam. If the price of bread goes up, your demand for jam will happen what? Comes down, because if you don't buy, because bread is expensive, you're not going to buy bread, then you're also not going to buy jam, right? So it's negative. So if the cross elasticity is less than 0, which is negative, you can say the good is complement. So this is how I'm going to ask the question, right? I'll say cross elasticity or demand for a particular 2 goods is negative 0.5. What kind of good is it? Complement or substitute? You should say complements. Read through this. This is Other one we call income elasticity. Now, whenever income comes in, you think about two things, right? You have normal good and you have inferior good. So if you're changing income, income increases, you get a positive value here, and your quantity also increases, you get a positive value here. So that kind of good is what we call normal good, right? Positive, positive. On the other hand, so that's what normal good elasticity is greater than 1, positive, positive. On the other hand, if the income goes up, inferior good second-hand cars you're buying less, so negative. Negative divided by positive is a negative, and negative answer is less than 0, so that means inferior good. Simple as that. So I'll ask you a question. The price elasticity, income elasticity of demand for a particular good is positive. What kind of good it is? You say normal. Is negative. What kind of good it is? You will say inferior. Elasticity of supply is the same thing. The price goes up. The only difference is when the price goes up, the quantity increases. So you're measuring how the suppliers, respond. Now, in this case here, prices rise by 8%, quantity rises by 16%. So elasticity. So in this case, remember, it's positive, positive. So there's no negative problem here. There's no negative answer. It's always positive. So it's very simple. So 2 greater than 1, that is elastic. Flatter, the same thing. Like flatter it is, the more elastic it is. So same idea. Well, that's about that. You don't need to sort of worry about too much here. Thanks so much, elasticity. I'll upload the second part later on. Take care now. Bye bye.